When this happened, I was a dumb 20-year-old kid, addicted to online games. At the time, my laptop had been damaged, so I borrowed without permission. My older brothers, and while searching for my favorite gaming sites, I found a website with cool-looking games and started trying some of them out. This was before I discovered Facebook. Mind you, some of those sites were full of bugs and didn't always have reliable security options. So getting into anything unknown was risking catching viruses and malware. But like I told you, I was a dumb kid one day. I was bored and decided to take my brother's computer again and look for a gaming site. I typed into the search bar, cool games, not boring, or shooting games. I started going through the options, but almost all of them were pages I had visited before. But then a pop-up screen was positioned at the top right of the screens and it said the words, Death Games. This screen was a bit strange and appeared out of nowhere. Not that it was unusual to have ads pop up out of the blue when you were doing anything online. But this one, for some reason, seemed peculiar to me. And as I have a bit of a twisted mind, I clicked on it. For a minute, the screen was blank. I couldn't see anything. But suddenly, this screen lit up with the words, Hello, do you want to watch someone die? Click the submit button to continue. The words were written and read and dripped like blood. I almost burst out laughing at how crappy the place looked, but I was there. I stared at the screen for a moment when I noticed the send button was starting to blink. Then I saw the words change and now read, Oh, what's wrong? Scared, don't be chicken. It's just a game. Don't be shy. Click the button now. I sighed heavily. Clicked the button, expecting any silly little game of badassery. And according to what I saw at first, I thought I wasn't wrong. What I saw looked like a very bad cartoon. There were 3 crudely drawn characters. They looked like Peppa Pig characters, but in a human and half scary version. 2 were men, the other a woman. The men were drawn like typical cartoon bank robbers with bandit masks and black and white striped shirts. The woman was sitting in a chair and animated to look exaggeratedly frightened, shaking, whimpering, very terrified. The man to her left looked at me, because I swear he was looking at me and smiling. Then he asked me, Do you want to see her die? His voice was like a disguised voice, as if he had some voice simulator. After that question too, button choices appeared on the screen. Yes or no? I hesitated for a moment, wondering what the hell was going on. But the man spoke again, a little annoyed. Now, look, you clicked on the link. I know. You want to see what happens next. Just do it all at once. It's just a game. So click the button. I thought about it for a moment, but in the end, I said, What the heck? And hit the yes button without thinking about it anymore. After that, the other guy went to the back, put on a butcher's apron, and appeared on the scene again. This was all in animation. It was the cartoons that did this. The guy in the butcher's apron was now standing next to an operating table with all the tools at the ready. The animation that came next still gives me chills. Music. The guy started using a hacksaw that sounded like it was very real. Did the woman's screams, which unlike the narrator's altered voice, sounded like real screams of terror. The animation was sickening to say the least. The guy started dismembering the woman alive with the saw. He tossed the limbs aside one by one and finally did the same with the head. As he did so, the sounds could be heard very realistically, the woman's blood-curdling screams, the sound of the saw slicing through bone and tissue, the gurgling noises, and her agonized moans until they were completely muffled. I almost laughed because of how well accomplished the sound effects were. Unlike the animation, which sucked, I felt a little weird though, as that woman's screams of terror sounded so real that it gave me goosebumps. Did you like it? I knew you were curious. Want to see something even better? I clicked yes again, and then another animation began. This time it was the same two men, but now in scuba gear. And the third was no longer a woman, but a guy in an executive suit standing at the edge of a huge pond. The one in the suit had his hands tied behind his back. The one on the left held up a sign that said, "Do you want to watch him die?" I hesitated a bit again, but clicked yes. Then the other diver grabbed the guy in the suit by the ankles and started dragging him into the water. The guy was screaming his head off, trying to get loose and begging for his life. As with the previous animation, the sound effects were too realistic. Everything could be heard in detail down to the smallest sound. In the end, the diver lifted the guy up with great force and threw him into the water. The victim fell into the water with a splash that drowned out his terrified screams. I couldn't believe that even that sound was so realistic for about 30 seconds. Nothing happened. But suddenly, the guy in the suit surfaced, still screaming his head off. I could barely see something behind him, dragging him down. Another minute later, the man came out again, but he was no longer screaming now. The animation, his arms had disappeared, and there were red lines drawn in a way that gave the impression that they had been ripped off his shoulders instead of cut off. They looked like they had gone through a giant blender. Then suddenly, the thing that took him away appeared. A huge alligator grabbed him by the side and dragged him down without coming back out. I started to feel really bad about those hellish animations. It wasn't fun anymore. I just wanted to get out of that place and never come back to it. But then the screen changed again. Now the two men were no longer drawings. They were real people in some kind of grey room, but with white masks on. And near them was the body of a completely dismembered woman. And one of them was holding a clothes hook with the remains of a torn business suit, soaking wet and dripping with red-tinted water. The voice, still in disguise, said, "Wasn't it fun to see these two? You wanted to see more, and we did it for you. Only they had to experience it. But so can you. Please don't leave the site. You'd be taking all the fun away from us now." I was really scared. I stood petrified in my chair, breaking out in a cold sweat. Only then did I realize with horror that the animations had been to disguise the crimes. Those murders had been recorded and turned into silly drawings, to disguise what was really going on at that point. 3 options appeared on the screen. One said, "Yes, I want to experiment." Another said, "No, I don't want to experiment." And the last said, "I want to meet you." I clicked no, obviously, but there was no response. Was it a threat? What's wrong with you? Don't you want to have fun? You had an amazing experience. You saw us do what we did, and you chose. No, you better choose right this time now. I was starting to hyperventilate. My breathing was rampant, as was my heartbeat. I felt an infinite pit in my stomach, and I could barely feel my fingers. I was in a complete panic again. I clicked no pressing as many times as I could until I was able to successfully exit the site. I swear I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. Gathering whatever vestige of courage I had left in my body, I checked my history, but the site was no longer there. It had disappeared without a trace. A few minutes later, my brother arrived and found me using his computer. I looked at him with all the panic I still had in my body, and he asked me what I was doing. So I answered him and told him everything that had just happened. He immediately pulled me away and did something on the computer that I didn't understand, and then turned it off. He scolded me for using his computer without permission, and then explained that what I had just seen was not a normal page, but something from the dark web. To be honest, I have no further knowledge about that. All I know is that my brother had a router that allowed him to access the deep web. He studied computer science and knew about such things. So he told me that he had blocked the site via a code, and now he had to make sure that his computer had not been hacked. I asked him in a panic if what I had seen was real, and he confirmed that it was, and that these were very dangerous people. I told him that we should call the police, but he told me not to even think about it, because then we would be in real danger. This told me tremendously worried, but he just took me out of the room and told me he would take care of it. In the end, I never knew exactly what he did, who he contacted, or who he talked to. I just know that the next day I asked him about it, and he said not to worry, that everything was taken care of. I will never forget when we discovered the deep web and all the crazy stuff could be found there. My friends and I, when we were in high school, were fanatics of internet urban legends. We would spend hours surfing sites like Reddit and 4chan, looking for weird stuff, both old and new. Not that we were looking for anything in particular. We just liked the surprise factor in the unpredictability of what we could find. I think our generation was very attracted to that sort of thing because of sites like Californication Cable. I grew up in the 2000s, so my friends and I were among the first generation to have high-speed internet access at home and unsupervised. So everyone explored their own interests as they wanted at that time. For the first time, you could listen to something and then go to the web to investigate further. And while many of us only downloaded music and videos on platforms like Aries and Kaza, full of viruses, most of the time others discovered that you could download practically anything on LimeWire, which was like a kind of digital Russian roulette. That is, sometimes you thought you were downloading a My Chemical Romance song and ended up with a video of a decapitation. It was completely crazy. As you might imagine, we were initially fascinated with the idea of the deep web, although this hidden part of the internet had been around long before that. It was in the mid-2000s that the term became popular, and it was something we talked about a lot at the time, because there were so many weird things. We'd heard about it, rumors being made up and horror stories being posted online. At that time, there was sort of a fascination among young people for that place. I remember at school, all my classmates started talking about it, repeating all these stories that were posted online. And obviously, when my friends and I started hearing about it, we were immediately interested. There's no other way to describe it. The deep web was the last frontier, the only place you could explore and see things that no one else had seen. And of course, we had to go in there and take a look on our own. So we started researching what it took to get in. None of us wanted to use our own devices, so we thought we'd buy a second-hand laptop exclusively for that, as we'd heard a lot of scary stories about hackers operating there, plus a lot of dangerous people. The truth is that we did some pretty intense research before we tried to make any inroads there. Sure, being high school students, we didn't have enough money to buy a computer on our own. But the urge to take the plunge was too strong. So one day, I got tired of waiting and decided to do it on my own. It's not that entering the deep web is illegal, it's what you do once you're inside that matters. I told my friends I would do it from my computer at home. It took me a couple of days of research, but I did it. I'm not going to explain how, so you don't make the same mistakes I did. But let's just say you need a special browser for that. If you really want to get in, you'll have to figure out the rest on your own. The thing is, I made the necessary adjustments, downloaded the software, and started experimenting. Getting to the deep web is easier than they say. The hard part is navigating. There are no URLs. Like on the normal internet, you need to know specific addresses to find the sites. This prevents anyone from getting in and getting into trouble. I did some research so as not to get discouraged and decided to visit some sites that looked interesting but not too dangerous for that. I went to my lifelong trusted friend, 4chan, and the anonymous users there. They gave me some advice, but basically, they all told me to stay away from the deep web. However, after a whole night of questioning and haggling, they passed me a link with a list of dark web addresses. There were thousands. I remember feeling dizzy when I saw it. I couldn't even imagine all the crazy stuff that would be there. I did start as anyone would. One link at a time. I can't tell you the disappointment I felt when I opened the first link, and it took me to a dead site. I thought I had been totally scammed. I felt completely ripped off. The first 10 or 20 links were all the same dead site. But I wasn't going to give up. I spent a year of my high school life talking about the wonders of this place. So I couldn't just give up and say I was wrong. I did what any young person with 2 fingers in front would do. I skipped a bunch of links until I found one that looked interesting and followed it. And wham! This time, the site wasn't dead. It was some sort of online marketplace. And as you might imagine, the stuff they were selling wasn't stuff you'd find in a normal store. Just to give you an idea, I came across a fetish site where you could buy urine of any kind. It seemed like the site focused on clean urine, the kind that would pass a drug test. I definitely hit the mother of all loads. I hung around for a while, browsing, just to make sure I didn't miss anything after all. I was a scout and had to make an accurate report for my friends. So I spent the rest of the night at it. As slow as methodical researches, my friends were freaking out when I told them about everything I had found on the deep web. They couldn't even believe that I had actually found something. And from my home computer, they kept asking me if I was crazy. And if the FBI was watching me, I hit the jackpot. I told them, half euphoric, half nervous. For a few weeks after that, my friends would come over almost every day after school, usually when my parents were at work. And we would try various random URLs from the copy and paste list. The list itself was hosted on one of those old text sharing websites, so anyone could make changes to the document at any time. Sometimes we would see someone delete a URL or type a new one at the end. In fact, we had our own list of websites we visited and websites that were dead. I can't even begin to tell you all the crazy things we saw. It started with a weird website of the year, but that was just the tip of the iceberg of hell. That's the kind of website you can find on the normal internet these days. Pissing bags, baths and flasks, typical fanboy-only stuff. It's almost as if the depravity of the dark web has slowly spread to the normal internet in recent years. Anyway, we moved on to more interesting URLs a week later. We explored another marketplace that was more like a forum, not selling things, but services. The members of this forum claimed to be hitmen from different places, each with their own skills and goals. This last part varied a lot and was reflected in the price assassins willing to kill normal people were asking around $20,000 or Mexican pesos. The highest prices were between $100,000 and $50,000. UPF front. And then another $50,000 after the job. These were for high-profile targets. It was mind-boggling to see only dollars or rubles. But there was no way to verify anything. Part of us was convinced it was all role-playing people pretending to be what they were not. But we were curious, so we created a forum account. We didn't specify much, as you might imagine. Less is more for a hitman. It seemed to be a way to establish contacts, and then details and money would be exchanged later, probably in person. We examined the website thoroughly, but found nothing to prove that what we were seeing was real. A few days passed, and nothing happened. But one afternoon, while exploring on another site, a small blue bubble appeared in the upper right corner of my screen. It looked like an eyeball, but the size of my pinky fingernail. At first, I didn't think anything of it, really. I thought it was something in the browser, like it needed an update or something, and kept exploring it. Wasn't until we were done for the day and everyone went home that I noticed it again. Even after closing the programs we used to browse the dark web, that little blue bubble was still there in the upper right corner, now against the background of my monitor. I did everything I could to erase that bubble from my computer, but to no avail. I rebooted, shut down completely, scanned with antivirus, purged everything that was part of my computer, but nothing worked. I figured I had to deal with it, which wasn't a big deal. In the end, being a silly kid forgetting about the bubble was like breathing, and believe it or not, we kept exploring the dark web despite that little eyeball watch watching us. It was a couple more weeks before we found a website that interested us all. It was a black market for hackers and data. There, hackers had their resumes listing the things they could do for you, even some things they could teach you. It was like a hub for password theft and sneaky backdoor access. For some reason, being on this website didn't scare us, even though this seemed to be the place where bad things would really happen. This is a side effect of when you start to become confident, lose your fear, and become careless. And in our case, to the point of not seeing the danger in front of our eyes. We were hanging around that website for a while until one day that little blue bubble disappeared from the corner. We all looked at each other and laughed, letting the scare pass. Then we kept exploring the website, and suddenly a text box appeared on the screen in gray, like the stupid little kids we were. We started screaming and shouting as if we had just passed a video game level, even though we had no idea what we had just encountered. The message went something like this: "Hi, I'm one of the administrators of this website. We log everyone who comes through here as best we can. But I've been monitoring your activity since you first showed up. I have seen them on our servers every day and have come to the conclusion that they have no interest in buying or using any of the services listed. I suspect that even if they had an interest, they would have no way to pay for them because they are a bunch of high school kids messing around with things they don't understand." The guy went on to explain that we weren't in trouble and that the management team didn't mind us looking, but others would. Due to the sensitive nature of the website, many real hackers lurked just below the surface. And since I was on my home computer using my family's internet without any antivirus protection, my connection to the dark web was like a flashing red sign with all my personal information. I had no idea that my presence on every website was an invitation for people to come and take advantage of me. Then the guy said that if I took more precautions to protect my connection, I would be safe exploring. He asked me if I had noticed a little blue bubble on my monitor screen. I replied that yes, it had been there for a week or two. The administrator explained to me that I had picked up a hitchhiker on one of those obscure websites, and that person was tracking everything I did. They couldn't see me through the screen or anything, but they could see everything I did on our home internet, probably trying to blackmail us. The administrator also explained to me that when he investigated my connection, he took the liberty of deleting my hitchhiker. "You should disconnect now. If you know what's good for you," was the last message I received from him. We all looked at each other with the same sense of disbelief. Being high school kids, we needed more than a creepy message to convince us. One of my friends leaned over my shoulder and wrote, "How do we know this is legit? Anyone could be making this up." The administrator responded with my full name and the full names of several other friends inside the classroom at the school. We all went to my parents' names and home address and a further warning on the dark web. There are only two ways to learn that this is not a game: the easy way, as now, or the hard way, as I assure you. You do not wish to find out. I have complied with warning you. Now you decide. Then he disconnected after this last message. There was a tense silence in the room. I think we all felt the same shiver run through our bodies. The one that warns you that your skin is in real danger. At that moment, we all looked at each other with wide eyes and fear very visible in our eyes. I immediately disconnected, deleted the router, and that was the last time in my life I poked my nose into the deep web. I will start this story by admitting that I am addicted. Pot is my all-time vice, but if I want something stronger, I buy it from a friend who supplies me. However, this happened one time when I didn't have a dealer and a college friend recommended ordering through the deep web. At that time, I had no idea what he was talking about. But then he explained to me in broad strokes and then downloaded a browser on my computer called Tour. Then left me 3 written URLs of pages where I could buy both my usual weed as any other type of substance. And when I say any, I mean any. There is absolutely everything in those places, from high purity coke to drugs. Made with some exotic plant from a country at the end of the world. Everything, but obviously with different prices. But what surprised me the most is how easy it was to buy there. It was just a matter of a few clicks and a few Bitcoin transfers, and boom, I got whatever I wanted in my mailbox. However, I'm not just an addict. I'm also a pretty curious person, and the dark web was like discovering a new world. At first, I only went in to buy drugs on sites that my friends passed on to me. But one night, I was sober, and at home something rare for me. So bored as I was, I decided to open Tor and see what shady things I could find in the dark web, as my friends also told me about this, but also about certain dangers I could face. So I had never wanted to cross the line. But that night, curiosity overcame fear. So I jumped in. If you've ever been on the dark web, you'll know that you can't just search for red rooms or hitmen for hire and get results. You have to find links to those sites first. So I set about Googling, trying to find links to underworld websites. I know it's weird to actively search for the worst. But since I entered the dark web that night, I had a strange sense of morbid curiosity. Like I said, curiosity got the better of me. The thing is, I spent quite a while looking for links, but everything I found was either too simple or the links didn't even work. I was about to give up, but in the last attempt, I clicked on a deep web subreddit on Reddit. I didn't expect to find anything, really. I browsed through the most popular for half an hour before selecting new. And that's when I saw it, a simple text post titled "Murder and the Life of the Murderer." Services ruined. The text box of the posting was what appeared to be a random mix of numbers and letters. It took my tired brain a second to decipher it, but I quickly realized it was a link probably to a hitman website, so I decided to paste it into my dark web browser. And what do you think? It worked. But before I continued, I thought I'd go back to the profile to see if they had posted any other dark web links. But when I went back to the post, the profile had mysteriously disappeared. Anyway, I reopened the dark web and went back to the site. At the top was the name Assassin's Assassination and Life Destruction. Services next to what looked like a skull inside some sort of tunnel. I laughed a little when I saw it. I thought the site must be fake. But as I scrolled down, I was not disappointed. There was a paragraph of green text on a black background and a small box to the right that just said, "Place in order." The text was the main part, took up almost the entire page and listed all the ways they could kill someone. I laughed again because this had to be a joke. I was even tempted to place an order just to see what would happen, but better not to risk it. I thought I was about to close the computer and call it a night when I heard a knock on the door. I live alone, so it was rare to have visitors, especially so late. But when I opened it, it was just my friend Mark, who is also my trusted dealer. I let him in without hesitation, and he shoved a huge bag of marijuana in my face. I smoked for a while and got back on the computer. But after that, it was all a blur. I don't remember anything I did after that, but I woke up about 9 o'clock a.m. lying on the couch, which meant I had slept for at least about 6 hours. Although, honestly, I felt like it had been 2. I got up, made myself a coffee, and sat down to play video games, ready to enjoy my Sunday lazing around as usual. But you can imagine my surprise when I opened the computer and saw that I had ordered my own death the night before, although I thought it was stupid. I felt an emptiness in my stomach, even stoned. I usually make sensible decisions, so I don't know what the hell was in that weed Mark brought me. I kind of laughed about it. I didn't even remember. I guess a normal person would have done something different. But I was still half out of it from what I'd gotten myself into the night before. So I went about my day. I won't deny that I was a little paranoid, but like I said, I assumed it was a joke. I even laughed at the email I received from the website saying the hitman was already on his way. However, later that night, a dark sedan parked across the street from my house. I didn't see it pull up, but as I was making myself some dinner, I saw it through the kitchen window. I live in the middle of downtown, but there are a lot of trees and bushes between the houses on my street, so I would be surprised if anyone else had seen it besides me. At that moment, I panicked. What if the place was real? I mean, I'm just a girl. I live alone. I have no weapons. Only a slightly larger than normal kitchen knife is what I would have for defense, and I doubt it would do any good. I decided to put on a hoodie and tucked the knife in my front pocket before leaving the house and approaching the driver's side window of the car. Even I was surprised at my own courage, although I think that was due to the fact that I was still half flying from the night before. As I told you, I crossed the street and approached the sedan, then knocked on the window, but nothing happened. It was pretty anticlimactic. I was ready to talk to the guy and explain that I had done something stupid while high as a kite, or to fight for my life. If that plan didn't work out, all because I had done something stupid. But like I said, nothing happened. I even moved my head closer to the window, as if there was a reflection to try to get a better look inside. But I could barely see anything. I could only make out 2 empty seats. There was no one inside. I had been scared for nothing. I decided to wait by the car for a while to see if anyone was coming. But after half an hour, I got hungry and had to go back inside to get my dinner out of the oven. I swear, it was only a minute between going inside to get my food and looking out the window again. The car was gone. I didn't even hear it start. What the hell? I muttered to myself. Then I closed all the curtains and locked all the doors. I tried to relax, but something didn't sit right. I still had the feeling that car wasn't there by chance. And just as I was starting to calm down a bit, the power went out. Then I panicked again. I froze for a few minutes, standing in the middle of the room, still with my plate in my hand, I swear. At that moment, I was waiting for the bullet, the car disappearing out of nowhere, and now the light was suddenly gone. I didn't think it was a coincidence. I didn't understand anything. But I was really very scared. About 30 or 40 seconds passed, and then the electricity came back on, and all the appliances started to beep. At that same instant, I heard several knocks on the door. I immediately tensed up, but I asked who it was with a trembling voice. No one answered me. I asked again, and there was no answer either. I waited for about 10 or 15 minutes more, and when I saw that they didn't knock again, I gathered my courage again and walked to the door. And as I did so, I couldn't help but imagine opening the door and being greeted by the barrel of a gun in the middle of my forehead. I opened the door slowly in surprise. There was no one there. But as I was about to close the door and return to the house, I looked down and saw that there was an envelope. This was a black envelope with no return address. I picked it up off the floor and took it inside. I hesitated a bit to open it, but finally I did. Then my jaw dropped to the floor. In the envelope were several photographs of me taken from my computer, showing me with my eyes quite red, and looking a bit lost in the corner was the date and time. They were from that same day at 3 o'clock in the morning. They were probably from the moment I ordered my own death. Through this page and behind the last photo was a handwritten note which read, "Do not play with what you do not know. Girl, you are lucky today, but if I see you on my site again, you're dead. Stay away from the dark web." At that moment, my whole body began to tremble. I felt a knot in my stomach, and I had to run to the bathroom to vomit. But immediately I came out. I ran to my computer and totally deleted the browser, but just in case. That same day, I had my computer formatted. That was the last time I entered the dark music web. This happened when I was 14 years old. I must say that I have been a victim of bullying during practically all my student life. I'm the typical small, skinny, bespectacled kid who gets picked on for his looks. And to top it off, I'm gay. In short, I've always been a magnet for bullies. However, the day came when I simply had enough of being the target of abuse from a group of misfits, just because they considered me the weakest. So moved by anger, I decided to finally do something. But what I did, far from making my life better, destroyed it completely. And not only me, I was coming out of school after having our last class of the day, physical education, when suddenly I went face first to the ground, and my face was filled with dirt. I looked up just in time to see a soccer ball flying straight at my face again. Boom, it hit me squarely and I fell backwards, looking at little stars. "Ow," I cried out. "Help me. Someone helped me up." But no one helped me. Everyone was too busy laughing at me. I got up on my own, wiping my face with my t-shirt while looking at the jerk who hit me with the ball. It was Juan, the school bully, and his friends were laughing as this one walked over and pushed me back to the ground. Why don't you get out of here? Go back to hiding under a rock and die, you freak. I bet no one wants you. They continued to laugh and taunt me as they walked away, leaving me alone and humiliated while I wiped off the mud. I had had enough of bullies playing with me and my feelings like I was worthless. Their laughter was digging into my back as I walked away, and with every step I took, I became more and more filled with helplessness. I got home, locked myself in my room, and collapsed on the bed to cry out of sheer rage. I felt tears running down my cheeks until sleep finally overcame me. I felt trapped in an endless cycle of humiliation with no escape in sight. When I woke up, I felt no better. Better. The problem was that this was a year-long affair. I can't remember a single year that I attended school without feeling bullied and judged, being the target of aggression and humiliation from those who were bigger and stronger than me, and who thought they were better is something I learned to live with throughout my time at school, but not exactly something I got used to. You never get used to. That it was exhausting and exasperating. I can't even describe how it feels. Only someone who has been through it can be able to understand the way bullying destroys you morally and psychologically. And I was already at that point where you collapse and just say, enough. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and lost myself in the void of social media looking for an escape, a distraction, anything to take me away from my reality. But every post, every photo seemed to mock me. Even more, so many people looking cool and bragging about their perfect lives, reminding me how alone and vulnerable I felt. Anger began to boil inside me. A very dark and dangerous feeling that I had never experienced before began to form inside me. I decided to close the social networks and got on Google, looking for answers, looking for a way out. I didn't even know what I was looking for. The only thing that was clear to me was that I wanted to do something to stop feeling so miserable. It was then that I came across several forums and blogs full of stories of revenge of people who had suffered like me and had decided to take control. The words, an eye for an eye, echoed in my mind, fueling my growing desire to make my abusers pay for all the pain, humiliation of all these years. That's when I saw an article explaining how to access the deep web, that dark and mysterious corner of the internet, where it was said you could find anything. At that moment, my curiosity mixed with the desperation I felt, and an idea began to take shape in my mind. Could I find the solution to my problems? There could the deep web offer me the revenge I so longed for. I wanted to find out, so I clicked on the link. It took me to a page with a lot of weird links, but one in particular caught my attention. Hit men for hire. I was somewhat surprised, but I kept reading the page. Said that they could eliminate anyone who gave you trouble for a price. Obviously, the first people I thought of were my abusers and how good I would feel if they disappeared. Also, one of the packages was free. Problem removal. What did that mean? That there would be no more requests? I shrugged and hit the order button. I followed the instructions and put in the names and addresses of those who were bullying me. I added everyone I could think of, even Professor Fernandez, who once left me, punished after class for my bad grades and gave me no right to defend myself. Myself being that I wasn't able to concentrate on anything, thanks to all the torment I was going through at the end. There was a space where it said to enter the payment. It was $25,000 for everything. I was wide-eyed, obviously. I didn't have $25,000. Plus, it said the payment was in bitcoins. Much less I did nothing for a few moments and thought, well, at least I tried. I moved the cursor to the X and clicked there to exit the site. But instead of closing the page, a small window popped up where it said, "Do you have the amount to cancel?" Yes. No. I thought it was really strange. I had never seen a site where they asked you that question. Well, it is assumed that if you requested a service, it is because you can pay for it unless you are a pathetic, angry, clueless year-old teenager like me. I clicked on no to get the hell out. But then a new tab opened up where they asked for my name and address, and underneath it said, payment for the job. I hesitated for a second before putting in my details. But what did I have to lose? I hit send, and something strange happened. Suddenly, a text saying, list of results appeared at the top of the screen with a list of all the people I had put in. The weird thing was that my name was at the bottom in the section that said, pay for work. But at that point, my mom called me for dinner, and I didn't have time to think about it. The truth is that I quickly forgot about the page and went on with my life. Days and weeks went by. I had almost forgotten about it until one day I noticed something strange. Juan was always waiting for me at the entrance of the school to bother me. But today, he wasn't there. In fact, I didn't see Juan or any of his friends all day. It was as if they had vanished. I wondered if they were sick or something, but I didn't see them in the hallways or in class. It was as if they had disappeared. That's when I remembered the website, and I got a chill. Surely, it couldn't be real, right? Besides, I didn't pay. I tried to ignore it and forget about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was upon entering the classroom that I figured out what was going on. The teacher was standing at her desk, her hair disheveled and her makeup smeared. She looked like she had been crying. Then she told us, John, Samuel, and Dixon have passed away. I felt myself go pale as the teacher spoke. They were dead. But how? It couldn't be. The website, could it? I froze, staring at Professor Fernandez's face still standing there. She wasn't alive. That meant it wasn't the page. I breathed a sigh of relief and opened my book, thinking that for once the world had done me a favor. But just as I started to read, I heard a strange noise, like a muffled gurgling sound. That's when I saw Professor Fernandez freeze, her face turning blue, and her hands holding a glass of coffee that began to slowly spill onto the desk and drip onto the floor. The glass shattered as it fell, and I realized, horrified, that her eyes were wide open, staring into the void. and suddenly she collapsed to the floor. She was dead. All the students started screaming and running out of the room. I ran out along with the crowd with my mind raced. It couldn't be the website. It just couldn't be. As I was running home, I suddenly realized that a car had been following me for several minutes. I started to run faster, but the car also accelerated. So I started running at full speed, but to no avail. Finally, it stopped a few meters in front of me, and a man got out of it. It was horrible. There's no other way to describe it. The guy was completely dressed in black. His head was shaved and he had a face full of scars. I tried to scream, Essie, but my voice wouldn't come out. I was paralyzed with fear. The man said, "You think you can rip me off? You made a disposal order and I fulfilled it now. It's time to pay." But I didn't mean that. I said, "No matter what you meant, kid, the contract is binding and I always collect my payments." "No, please, I can't. You made a deal with the devil. Now it's time to pay up. You wanted them dead and dead. They are finally." I managed to get my body moving, turned and ran. But the man was fast and much bigger than me. And as I advanced, I could hear his footsteps getting closer and closer. His breathing was raspy and choppy, and I could hear it getting louder and louder as he inevitably got closer and closer to me. I had been missing for 2 weeks, and they found me, thanks to an anonymous call from someone who told them where I was. I don't know who called them, but I'm thankful to be alive. Or well, sort of turns out I'm missing a kidney, my left hand, and something else I'd rather not think about. Most likely, they have already been sold on the black market of the deep web. The year was 1998, the year France won its first World Cup, the year the Euro was born, and the year I, at the age of 15, had the most disturbing experience of my life. I was on my parents' computer surfing the very slow internet of the time. I was researching Franco's dictatorship for a school assignment, when my friend Jake sent me an IRC message. "Hey, a guy at school told me about something super cool you can do on the computer," he said. "What's that?" I asked first. "Open, start, second. Go to run, third, type in this URL and let me know when you're done." He sent me the URL in question and I did as he said. Then a sort of command window opened up. It had 2 boxes for typing text and a normal command line. I let Jake know when it was done, and he said in one box type your name, in the other a password, and in the last one the word Wario. I followed his directions to the letter, and then he opened a box that asked me to put a nickname, so I put no name, like no name in English. I thought that was interesting. Then the window closed, and after a while, a file opened that said, "Welcome to the Oregon Art Tile chat room user. No name has joined." I spent the next few months talking to my friends in that chat room. I had no idea who created it or how it worked. Apparently, that chat room only worked in the Oregon area, so in theory, you could talk to anyone there. But in practice, the only people there were G and a couple of other people. There was also a kid from high school who lived across town. And one time, someone showed up who claimed to work in tech support for an insurance company, but left quickly when they only responded with, "Where do you go to school?" I don't know why we use that room instead of a regular one. Maybe we like the secret clandestine role. But one autumn morning, I was in for a surprise. I had been made an administrator. I had no idea who had done it, but I strutted around in front of my friends for several days. I could change what people wrote to make them look like fools. Though the truth is, I didn't use my powers much. Mainly because I didn't know how until one day I logged in and saw that the anonymous messages to administrators were not empty as usual. I wish I had never looked if it was a very long story from a user named Sarah6754, written in several short messages. It told how her parents mistreated her, wouldn't let her leave the house, and how she would sneak out to go online. That night, Sarah6754 told us that she had seen the chat room open on her father's computer and was going to tell anyone she could. I asked her who she was and told her that if it were true, she would have called the police by now. But suddenly, the chat room stopped working. I tried to open it again, but I got an error every time I searched for the command and run. I was furious. Our secret hideout with Jake was gone. However, 2 days later, I was watching the news and they reported the following. Year-old girl is killed by her father after trying to escape through her bedroom window. The mother is in police custody, but the father is still at large, but really disturbing. Police had found descriptions on the family computer of boys named Jake, no name, and 2 others, where the father detailed how he imagined them and the horrible things he would do to them if he found them. They were things too gruesome to repeat here. That man was never caught as far as I know. He is still at large, hiding among us. I am sure he will never be caught. But I am even more thankful for the fact that he did not catch us. This happened a lot of years ago when Silk Road 1 was in its prime. I was looking for a specific substance at the time, but in my area, I couldn't find it at a decent price. It was frustrating because it used to be easy to get. But for some reason, everything had dried up and people were looking for alternatives. Some friends in the underworld told me about Tor and the Onion Network and how to get into a place called Silk Road. For those who don't know, Tor is like the Google Chrome of the dark web. The program you need to access those weird addresses that only exist there. Silk Road was a marketplace on the dark web where you could buy and sell just about anything using Bitcoin and relying on a reputation system to make sure you got what you paid for. Looking back, the whole experience seems surreal, but it was one of the coolest things about the internet at the turn of the Millennium Tour was called the Onion Router because it randomly changed your IP with every click. 1 minute, you were in Ohio, the next in Guatemala, and then Oslo. It was untraceable. Unless, of course, the system had ways of tracking you. But that's another story. The truth is that I got on tour, logged onto the dark web, and got to Silk Road. It seemed simple enough. So I made a post, as if I were on Craigslist or any forum. Hi, I'm looking for mushrooms. Please respond. It was basic and a little silly, but I didn't have much choice. I hit publish and waited the next morning. I checked and there was no post. I said to myself, What the hell was I thinking? But a few days later, someone responded. He had what he was looking for and asked me to send him a private message. I agreed, and we started talking about the details. Suddenly, I found myself agreeing to send a stranger almost $1,000. It was a lot more than I intended to spend. But for some reason, I liked this guy. Charming drug dealers have that effect. I guess that's how I knew he was legit. I only had $400 set aside for the purchase, so the other $600 was going to come out of my rent and bills for the month. I had to convert it all to Bitcoin and send it to a random wallet address. At the time, it all seemed very futuristic and exciting. After payment, the guy agreed to send me 1 ounce of mushrooms per week for 5 consecutive weeks. The delay was for security and would allow me to sell more. Over time, it all made sense to me, but the delivery never came. 2 weeks went by, nothing, and the guy's account disappeared from my contact list. That charm I felt was that of a scammer, and I couldn't see it through the screen. I felt like a complete. There was nothing I could do. The real problem was that I was planning to sell that first shipment to cover the rent money I had spent. I wasn't going to be able to pay in 2 weeks. Then the first of the month came and I was up to my neck in debt, so I did the only thing I could think of to get even. I left a bad review for that guy on Silk Road. I said that he had ripped me off, that he probably ripped off a lot of people, and not to give him any money. Don't do business with this guy. He'll steal your money for sure. I wrote. I was running at full speed, but to no avail. He tackled me in the back, and I crashed to the ground. Crashing. The last thing I remember of him was a yellow tooth smile and his scarred face as he covered my mouth with a strange smelling rag. I tried to scream, but there was nothing I could do at that point. He had me. When I woke up, I saw his horrible face and his eyes staring intensely at me while he was smiling. A very sinister smile. I was in a basement, strapped to a table, surrounded by medical devices. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I could only watch him approach me with a huge needle and hand it to another man in a hospital gown before passing out again. The next time I woke up, I was in the same place where I was attacked. I was groaning and confused as a bunch of cops ran towards me. What the hell? I seemed to be all right. Or something. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. But then, the facts confirmed that it wasn't. That it had all been very real, and that things were much worse than I could even imagine. After that, I tried to forget about everything and concentrated on getting money to pay the bills. It was exhausting, but I got some extra jobs and sold some stuff. Then I started saving for the next month, but life got pretty complicated for me. One day, I came home feeling like relaxing and logging on to the computer for a while. And I remembered all that crappy experience on the dark web and decided to take a look at my post on Silk Road. And there it was, a new message. Hi, I'm a trusted Silk Road seller. I saw your post about the scammer. I had an encounter with him a few days ago. He also tried to scam me, so I am retaliating. I used one of my alternate accounts to sell him several ounces of MDMA he already paid. And what
I mailed him was a quick pound of sugar and a note with a sad little face and his full name. Is there anything else you'd like this user to suffer from? I had no idea who this person was, but it got me thinking about the possibilities. It was sort of like a code of honor among thieves. And truth be told, I was fascinated that the Silk Road system was self-correcting. Unfortunately, Ellie, I couldn't think of any creative ways to make the scammer suffer, so I didn't give the seller any suggestions. He told me, no problem, that the guy would have enough trouble in the next few weeks. He then asked me for my Bitcoin wallet address and the amount I had been scammed. I thought long and hard about my answer. Part of me wanted to lie to see if I could get something good out of this whole horrible experience. But another part of me knew that this person might find out the truth. And come on, we were talking about the dark web. These people could find out anything, and if I lied, it could cost me dearly in the end for my stunt. So I told him the truth, even though it seemed crazy at the time. But he gave me his approval and said he would be back soon. I couldn't believe it. My bad review was going to pay me back after everything that had happened. I wasn't sure any of it was real, but the next morning, all the money was back in my wallet. I wish I could explain the feeling I had as if my soul had left my body at some point and was now returning. I believed in humanity again, and I certainly gained a deep respect for the dark web community.